Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Force here. Today we're going to be taking a look at a Terran strategy. Now in this particular strategy video, we're going to be looking at a TvZ strategy. You can see the opponent here is Zerg. We've got Dark Force, and then Terran player we're looking at here is Goody. What we're looking at specifically is actually going for some very fast double Starport for some quick Banshee, very hard Banshee harass. And something else we'll be taking a look at is actually Goody will be doing a proxy double Starport as well. Now what this allows you to do, let's talk about the risk and the reward for it. The risk is, of course, if it's scouted, then the whole thing is pretty much kaput. There's really nothing you can do to defend it. Very likely, if it's scouted early on, you're pretty much the cat's out of the bag and you're going to be in a lot of trouble. But if it is not scouted, and if you can put it in a position that your opponent maybe isn't likely to scout, or that you know they won't likely look, then what this does for you is it allows you to get those Banshees there quicker, and reinforcements are a lot quicker as well. So let's start things off, of course, by talking about the opening build order. Now, one big thing, we're going to be dropping a second Refinery, but you do need to wait until that scout's out of your base. Now, we did see Dark Force left the base because he knew that Marine popped. Had there still been the drone inside of the base, you would have then just used that Marine to actually kill it off, and then go ahead and drop your Refinery. But opening build so far, we actually saw a 10 depot and then 11 racks and 12 refinery. So you cut the production of one SCV to get your racks up a little quicker, and although that's going to hurt your economy slightly, it does allow you to get that factory and those double starports out that much quicker. And that 15 supply was at Orbital Command. Also 15 supply is when we saw that refinery come out. Then right after that, at 16 supply, once you have your first 100 Vespene, you'll be dropping your factory. And of course, scouting out your opponent will be priority number 1. So maybe after you finish off that first depot, make sure you go ahead and send an SCV, a scout, to find out where your opponent is. Now here comes the next trick. Now knowing where his Zerg opponent is, we're going to see that scouting SCV pull all the way back. We also saw Goody grab a second SCV from his main, and now he's going to be moving on over to that proxy position to drop his double starport. For defense early on, we'll be relying on Marines and Hellions. Another big advantage to coming out with this Hellion early on is scouting, but also denying scouting of your opponent. Now, going to be dropping those 2 starports here in that proxy position. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the benefit of this is that once these starports finish, we get the tech labs on them, and just so you know, the starports did get dropped at 22 supply, both of them here. You get tech labs on them, and then as soon as those Banshees pop, they're right next to the opponent's base. So you'd ideally want to proxy these somewhere close to your opponent's base in a position they are not likely to scout. But again, the risk and the possible danger is that if they do find this, they're going to send some Spielings over and take it out, and then you could be in a lot of trouble. But that's also going to be where these Hellions come in. If you make 1 to 2 Hellions initially, then that can be enough to actually shoo off even just a small force of Zerglings early on. But just trying to poke, trying to get some scouting done. Unfortunately, wasn't able to move in with that Hellion because of that Queen plus that Spine Crawler. But you can see right now those 2 starports are now up, putting tech labs on both of them, and then that's when you start the Banshee production. Very important to note, there will be no Cloak Research coming down with this. Realize that Cloak Research costing 200 Vespene, that is 2 less Banshees than you can have. The whole entire point of this push is to just overwhelm them with sheer force, not to try to hide behind the Cloak, because they are likely to have something prepared to deal with that Cloak. In fact, you can take a look here. We'll pause momentarily. You can see that Evolution Chamber coming on through right now, and once Dark Force has that up, he could just drop a couple of Spore Crawlers, and all of a sudden he can deal with Cloak. So the idea is not to worry about him spotting your Banshees, but just to have enough to overwhelm him, and as long as you avoid any of those Spore Crawlers, then you're all set. Alright, so we're going to pick it right back up now. Now, in terms of defense, possible counterattacks, you will want to come out with a bunker back at your main, and again, you will be relying on just Hellions and Marines. Now, once you get that bunker up, you can see there were a couple Spielings that moved across the map, so we're going to see right now Goody come down with this bunker. This will help you deal with any Roaches, Spielings, possibly Banelings as well. Keep in mind, if he pushed out with any of those things, you could also reroute those Banshees if necessary. But otherwise, producing out of your proxy starports, you will be constantly producing out those Banshees. Not a bad idea to have them rally to the ones that you're engaging with. Now, when it comes to the attack itself, there's a few key things you need to note. Number 1, the first primary target is going to be Queens. After that, you want to try to work on the economies to try to kill off workers. He is likely to eventually get up enough Spore Crawlers to keep your Banshees away. If you cannot target fire the workers because of Spore Crawlers and you've killed off all the Queens, the next thing that you're going to want to do is just pull back with your Banshees and try to stay on the outskirts and kill off things like the extractors. If you can sit in a position where you're able to target fire down that layer or even that expansion as well. Just trying to get in a good position away from those static defenses and the spore crawlers and do as much damage as possible. Back at home, you can see right now cutting that SCV production would fill up that bunker if there was a counterattack, but right now Goody is a little bit focused here on this Banshee harass. So as you can see, just staying away from that spore crawler and doing damage where you can. Ideally, would love to try to target fire down those workers, but if you can take down the hatchery, that's good by itself because you're not only stopping the production of additional queen, but you're you're forcing him back onto one base. So there you go. You can see just how very effective this is. Now we are in fact seeing Goody move out here and try to move towards these starports that are proxied and kill him off, but even just one Banshee is going to be enough to deal with that. There's even a second Banshee that popped, and since the Zerg player is likely so distracted by this aggression and hasn't been doing as much mining as he would have typically been able to do, then just a couple of Banshees should be enough to defend against that, as we saw Goody do there, and then he's just going to re-rally up and continue up this aggression. So remember, the first target is going to be queens. Try to avoid the spore crawlers if necessary, unless you're in a position like Goody is here where you can completely overwhelm them. If you're sitting at 6+ Banshees, you can easily take down a spore crawler before he kills off one of your Banshees. And then just sticking on the outskirts so you don't have to force yourself to move into those spores and killing off the buildings. Again, we saw the hatchery got killed at the expansion, and now that layer gets dropped. And as I mentioned at the start of this, the whole idea is just sheer power, overpowering your opponent with just a huge number of Banshees early on in the game. And again, you couldn't have done that had you gone for the Cloak Research. So realize that trade-off and everything of the sort. The big question is what happens if there was a counterattack again. You would rely on those bunkers and those Hellions. If the counterattack were strong enough, like maybe a Baneling Bust or a very strong Roach push, that it could break through this, then all you would have to do is just grab your Banshees and instead of going straight for his base, defend, and then move back out with your Banshees to attack. All right, so let's talk about the build order that we saw here for Goody. We saw him open up with 10 Depot, 11 Racks, and 12 Refinery. Obviously, that's a little different than the typical 10 Depot, 12 Racks, 13 Refinery. Cutting back that SCV for just a moment to get that Racks and Refinery out a little bit sooner means you can get that factory out quicker, and as such, those double Starports. 15 Command was the Orbital Supply, as well as that factory is what we saw at 15 Supply. Did I say 15 Command? 15 Supply was the Orbital Command, as well as that factory. 16 Supply, the second Refinery here. And then a 22 Supplies when we saw these double Starports. You get Tech Labs on them right away. Don't go for that Cloak Research. Put these in a position that aren't likely to get scouted by your opponent and just pump out a ton of Banshees. And again, first you're picking off Queens, then you're trying to hurt the economy. Avoid these if you're at a low number of Banshees. If you're sitting at 6 or 7+, you can take them down quick enough, but then you're just trying to target fire down the main buildings themselves, the layers and those hatcheries. So there you go, guys. Hopefully you have enjoyed this strategy video. As always, if you like the content, please subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. Keep watching and keep owning.